Supervisor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm flying solo today. Nita is not here, but she's here in spirit.
Absolutely. She's here on my missed calls, so she is here.
Right, right. Trust me, I got her number too.
Okay.
To go through our packet, you can see on page 1 of our packet with the binder clip. The very first page is the bank reconciliation. The city is reconciled through August 31st, and the city is almost done with reconciling September, and then they're going to move right into reconciling October. It is the city's hope to be caught up with the reconciliations here soon. There's been some change in staff and some teaching, so we're hoping that the person doing it now will have the opportunity to catch up, and the city will then be current. As you can see on page 1, the bank balance reconciles to $478,000. Overall, cash has dwindled since this August reconciliation. As of November 3rd, the latest safeguard tracker that I do for the auditor, the city had approximately $270,000 in the bank account, and that is before the outstanding checks. The reason for the lower cash balance is due to the city trying to pay down the accounts payable and claim payments that have come in. The city has paid approximately $306,000 in claims in the past 2 months. And the city currently has a bill for another 105 payments, $105,000 in claim payments that will need to be paid here within the next week. With the current appropriations that are in place, the Auditor of State's Office cannot approve the payment of these claims because there are not enough appropriations to cover them, but the city is making the payments just without Auditor of State approval. Jack is currently working with a third-party administrator to ensure the receipt of all claim bills be received in a timely manner. That was brought up at the last commission meeting. Once this bill of $105,000 is paid, the city is confirming that they should be current on all claims and have no delinquencies, as far as the city knows. But again, we're going to keep checking. The city is going to keep checking in with the third-party administrator.
Tish, as I brought up for you to push the third-party administration because he was holding up things as far as sending you all the bills. Is there a schedule that you all have worked out? All you're saying is in a timely manner. What is a timely manner? Is there a schedule that he would be doing that?
I don't know of a schedule per se. I know Jack has been pushing for the bills to be sent, and I think once the city can determine that they are current with what the third-party administrator has, I think at that point Jack will look to see about getting them either weekly or bi-weekly or whatever is most effective for both the third-party administrator and the city.
Okay, thank you.
What, the $105,000 in claims, what does that represent? Does that all relate to healthcare?
It is all between medical, prescription, and dental, which the city is all insured for.
If I may, you said before the cash balance is different than what's on the reconciliation, obviously because this is as of August. What did you say the cash was?
Currently, as of November 3rd, which is the last safeguard form I had to complete, the city had approximately $270,000 in the bank.
Okay. And of that, $105,000 in claims have to be paid.
Correct.
Okay.
received some revenue in the meantime, and I'm sure they had some expenditures in the meantime, but that was the latest date I had.
Tish, and I hate to ask this question, but I hear it so often. What does it take, and maybe, what does it take for someone to say and be correct that the city is completely broke?
I guess that would be subjective on how you define growth.
It's being echoed out in the community, and there is residents here, and it's being said that the city is broke. My definition of being broke is when you don't have anything in the bank, you can't meet your bills. We're doing it on a slow, progressive schedule, but you got money in the bank. Until you can't meet your payroll and all of that, that's what I'm saying. So at this point, we are meeting payroll, and you're going to tell us where we are progressively.
Can
Yeah.
I add, just as a finance professional, most organizations consider broke less than 1 month of expenditures in reserve.
Thank you.
And so if you don't have enough saved such that if no money came in for a month, you are broke.
Thank you.
In our case here, that number is, we were able to pay the payroll when it comes in, but there's $3 million in bad debt. And so the fact that you can't go out and clear out those accounts payables means that this city is broke. $200,000 you can spend it. But it has $3 million worth of people wanting money now. So it is. From a finance professional, if you don't have 1 month reserve, then you are broke, because all that has to happen is a hiccup. The county doesn't send something, and we call it funds check. You'll send it in and you'll get the deposit that says you can't pay this bill.
But at this point, we can pay it out. You know, if some more money is going to still be coming, more money will be coming in. But your definition is that if you don't have 1 month in reserve.
Yes.
My definition on a personal basis, if you don't have 3 months in reserve.
But most companies and cities won't have 3 months worth of reserve.
Yes.
So that indicator is traditionally, the city should be able to, or the organization should be able to provide for its general expenses for 1 month. And in our case, that 1 month in this city is approximately $1 million we need to be in that space.
Okay. Thank you.
Again, the financial packet is as of August 31st. On page 2, you can see currently there are 15 funds in the deficit. The one fund tends to go in and out. It's more of a timing thing, the employee withholdings fund. So that's why it's up from 14 to 15. And it's totaling just over 3.5 million. On page 6, this is where we're looking at an average monthly expenditure of approximately, or revenue of approximately 67%. And you can see the funds that are listed fall short in the year-to-date revenues. They're mostly grant funds and some court funds. On page 7, is the equivalent of page 6, just on the expenditure side of the equation. We do monitor each expenditure closely, and for the most part, salaries and benefits are the reason for the overages. As I mentioned earlier, all the claim payments have come in. At the prior commission meeting, Council President Barbara Thomas asked me about the police percentage being over their mark at that time. and I did look into that. There are 2 grants that the city receives and/or charges. The one is Safe Routes to Schools, and the other one is the School Resource Officers. In the past, those monies have been kept in a separate fund. In 2015,
Sorry.
We talked about another grant too, it was the COPS grant, I think.
the COPS grant starts in I believe September of 15 is usually when the federal grants start. So that'll hit mainly the next year. But in our appropriations, we accounted for some of the police expenditures to go into those other 2 funds to use up the balances. We haven't made that move yet. And that's why some of the police expenditures are over. I'm not saying it will eliminate them being over entirely, because the police have had some individuals leave, and the city has been making severance payments, and that is skewing the percentage as well. But the difference should come down slightly once I'm able to move those expenditures into those other funds to utilize the carryover balance.
Let me just ask from an accounting standpoint, when you move those expenditures, have you already used the appropriation, or are you going to make a journal entry such that the appropriation reduces for those expenditures? Or are you going to transfer it back into cover?
The general fund appropriations already includes those expenditures happening in the other funds. The other funds have the appropriations to cover the expenditures I'm looking to move into them. So,
Go ahead.
I can say, so the general fund, let's say they had $100 for police, and the police expenditures were $150. I intend to move the $50 difference into the other funds. And then the other funds already have $50 in appropriations to cover that.
Do you know what this home program 1999 is? Has so far exceeded the appropriation.
It is a CDBG form of a grant program. I'm sure the mayor could probably answer specifically what the home program does more so than me. I looked into the expenditure. There was one $45,000 expenditure made. I have not had a chance to talk to the finance director, because normally those funds are reimbursable grant funds. And my next line of inquiry is whether or not that revenue inadvertently got posted in the wrong fund, and now I'm looking to move that and to adjust the appropriations and the estimated resources to reflect that.
I know this is August, but have you received more CDBG grant funds? Estimated was $1 million, year to date, $192,000.
The timing of CDBG, we may receive this year's allocation next year. So it's really tricky. It depends on Congress and when they authorize the funding for CDBG. So there's often a timing issue. As to the specifics of that, I have to get back to you after this meeting, after I talk to the finance director and community development folks.
Right, but this year we would have received funds from last year then?
It's possible. It's
Okay.
possible. But in a lot of cases, yes, because of the delays in authorizing at the congressional level the CDBG legislation, we don't get the payment until the legislation is authorized by the Congress. And sometimes it's one of those things that gets tied up in a political struggle. There's one,
Well,
you asked,
we had estimated revenues of $1 million. I assume you anticipated
We're getting
for
about-
2014.
we're getting about $1 million.
That revenue.
We're getting about $1 million a year in CDBG money.
Okay.
It's pretty much guaranteed money.
Okay.
So it will come in. As for the year-to-date receipt of the money, I will get a specific answer for you. I'll tell you about the year-to-date. But yes, it's $1 million a year, and we do get it each and every year. The other side of the coin with those federal funds is the home program that was mentioned. We get a smaller amount for the home program. It's closer to $300,000 to $500,000, depending on the year and what the circumstances are. That money is typically money that is used to bring up to code those homes where the owner lives in the home, has significant need, where several items in the home are out of compliance. That federal grant money is used to bring a person's home up to code as long as they meet income and ownership guidelines. So it's a good program, much needed in the city. There's a lot more need out there than there is money.
We have inspectors.
One,
Check.
one, sometimes two.
Thank you for that question, because I was actually looking at the home program as well. Not that every federal grant is reimbursable basis only, but a great many of them are. And I was pretty amazed because we've got 51, almost 52,000 in expenditures, yet we have no revenues coming in. So either reimbursements have not been requested, or those expenditures were for non-reimbursable expenses, which should not have been assessed in that federal fund.
The home program does not have any, it doesn't have any funds in there, from what I'm told. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we'll let the commission know the circumstances.
Okay, but I'm just saying, as far as I'm knowing and looking at the numbers from before and what's going on, it's not in the home program.
That's inaccurate. Okay. That's inaccurate.
Well, you straighten it out later.
That's inaccurate.
You should have came prepared to do it now. You have here.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay.
Again, I have been working with Jack, the finance director, on changes to the 2015 amended certificate and appropriations. I'm hoping to get that done fairly soon. Once the changes are done, we'll reach out to council to go over the items with them, and then hopefully they will pass the new appropriation ordinance at one of their meetings. Once that happens, Jack and I will then get started on the 2016 budget, and we will reach out to council as well once that is ready to go. Currently, the city has made all of its payrolls thus far in 15, and they are current with pension. The next group of pages I have with the staple is our listing of outstanding accounts payables. And you can see as of October 27th, there is just under $2.9 million in outstanding payables. And that is all I have at this time.
Can I have a I had a question, and if you can answer it or not, I'm not sure. It just struck me, actually more than one question, but Innovair Solutions LLC, it's first page, maybe middle of the page. It looks like it anticipates not paying payments in the future, not making any payments in the future. Would that be correct?
We have not been able to verify that the city has made the payments since May. I can look into that more specifically for the next meeting, but
Okay, that's fine. Does anybody have any, is that it? Tish?
yes, that's all I have.
Does anybody have any questions for Tish? All right, thank you. Okay, Mayor, what do you have to report?
Very short report today. The revised financial recovery plan was submitted. It was approved by City Council. It's before the Commission today for consideration. So we anticipate and look forward to that. It's a tough plan, and there are some tough cuts to make in that plan, but it is the plan. Secondly, just as we look for ways to curb expenditures and look to pay off past due payables, every day there are activities that people may not think cost money, but they actually do. And we love free speech, we love the democratic process, but there's an activity that people think is good and it's very valuable, but it costs money. There's a recall election, for example, set for a member of city council. And people sign petitions, people want to have their say on that, and that's good, and that's part of the democratic process. But when we have elections outside of the normal election cycle, it costs the city money. And we have to be prepared for that to some extent. And the one recall election, because it's a board recall election, will cost only $15,000. But it's still $15,000 that we're not scheduled to pay. But it's because, again, people engaged in the democratic process, and it's our duty to do that. But the next set of recall elections that is perhaps on the horizon is a citywide recall, 2 citywide recalls. Each of those citywide recalls will cost the city $45,000. So that's $90,000. So if you take the $15,000 for the recall that we know is in place and add to it another $90,000, that's $105,000. So the city's going to have to pay that. So we would just let people know that although political activity is a great thing, freedom of speech is a great thing, there is a cost to it. And as we go forward, we have to be prepared for those people who engage in that political activity to, as a city, pay the bill. Thank you.
Quite coincidentally, that 105,000 meets the amount of claims that need to be paid.
Or 2 police officers for a year. So it's an exchange because we don't have extra money. If we have that election, that is $105,000 more behind that we are in claims, or we simply have to lay off 2 more police officers. So thank you.
Thanks. Any questions for the mayor?
I have a question, and I don't know if it's more appropriate for the mayor or back to Tish, and it's regarding the $306,000 in claims that have been paid. And because when I get this list, it's the same list, meeting after meeting. So I'd like to know what those claims were, how you made that decision regarding what to pay. So that, I guess that's really my question. What actually did you pay for that $306,000? Does that just relate back to healthcare as well, or are these separate claims?
I believe the $306,000 related to 3 claim payments submitted from the third-party administrator. One was a small dental claim, like a grouping of dental claims that were paid, and I believe that came to under $5,000. The majority of it were medical claims that came in that the third-party administrator had and then gathered into a packet and submitted to the city for payment. And there were 2 that made up that 306.
Okay.
It's really to the commission. It's really a simple matter of there is not enough cash to pay everything. So we have to pay the most pressing expenses first. When it comes to the health care of our employees, it's very, very important that we pay those things. And fortunately, we've had enough cash in recent months to catch up those payments on the claims. And when we do have more than the payments on the claims, in some cases, we do get to knock off a few things on the other payable list that's been around for a while. We do as much as we can.
And when are you scheduled to make the payment for the recall election?
We can either pay for it now or just have it deducted from our local government fund allocation that comes from Cuyahoga County. More than likely, given our financial situation, it'll probably just be deducted from our local government fund.
As well as the other citywide?
Yes.
And that's exactly what we need to use if we're issuing bonds or notes, right? Our local government
Exactly.
fund.
That's what we'll back the local government if we
There's also, which I don't know how that all figures out in the mix, is, I don't want to call it collateral security, if you will, for, that was offered up by the county, so that the bank would, and I forget which bank it was, would enter into the lease arrangement for the snowplows.
Yes.
So that's another
criticize any activity, but just to let people know, elections are quite expensive, especially when they're unscheduled.
The city, who are the?
A councilman and a certain mayor.
Okay, what other council person? I don't know.
That guy.
What, oh, you're a citywide
Oh,
council
rather than more, okay.
at large.
Right. Again, yeah, the ward is 1/3 of the city, which is why the cost for one ward, 1/3 of the city is $15,000, and the entire city is $45,000.
Any other questions for the mayor? We'll wait until we're there. Okay. All right, great. Ms. Thomas?
Well, I think I'll kick mine short this week, since I'm kind of tired today. But I would like to reiterate, not reiterate, but expound on some of the things that the mayor said. The assumption that there is going to be an additional recall completion should not be assumed that that's going to take place. The only one that is for fact that there is going to be an election, that comes up in December 8th, and that is for the already completed recall of a council person. Petitions, I'm told, have been pulled, but you got to get those petitions signed, completed, and they have to be approved by the Board of Election. To my knowledge, nothing like that has taken place. So we're not going to anticipate that there is going to be a charge to the city at this particular time. I think the mayor has a gift of putting a fact out there to deter individuals from doing their democratic duty. If the residents feel that this is what is needed, then that is what can happen. But again, let me stress that the documentation have not been completed to any recall for another council person or the mayor. There might be some circulation of petitions out there, but there is nothing to tell us that there is a completion, that it has been turned into the council office, and is on its way down there to the Board of Election for review and to set up an election schedule. So let's not get ahead of ourselves and deal with that because it happens to be the mayor that he thinks there's a recall for and another council person that there is a recall for. You know, sometimes it makes us kind of nervous when we talk about recall. And apparently, Mayor Jackson has had his recalls and dilemmas, and ain't nothing happened yet. So let's move right along and take care of the business that we got at hand, which is the financial recovery plan, paying our bills, which I'm very glad to see that our advice was taken and that Tish and the auditors have put their foot on the neck of the third-party administrators because they were shucking and jiving us and holding back our claims. For what I don't know, and for what I was not given an answer because Tish did not know, Nita did not know. So I told her, go and tell them I want a meeting, I want my stuff paid, or we would take their money because they're not providing the service to us that they were supposed to provide. And again, the council president, which is me, sat down with the finance director and went over the recovery plan once it was put together. And those pieces that could not show us return revenue were taken out of this, and hopefully we can get this process moving a little further. But that is up to the commission here, and it seems to be something that we could pass at this particular point. But we're working very diligently to support the recommendations that come forward from the finance director. I've sat and worked very closely with the finance director at this last meeting where we had the finance director and the law director present, and we went over it and they asked specific questions, and I think it was a very good meeting. It was a very informative meeting, one that has not happened in a long time. Before that, I must admit, the mayor did sit down with me and Tish and the finance director, and we looked at what was there, and I met again without the mayor going over the finance recovery plan. So this council is working very diligently with whatever it takes to meet its obligations as far as legislation, putting legislation, coming to meetings called out of order that need to have legislation taken care of to pass any and all revenues that might come into the city. Also, the council has been trying to find ways, some of our council people have been looking to find ways to bring in revenue. And it's an ongoing process. And we had our council meeting last night, and some of our residents was wondering where the money goes. And right now, I asked the residents to please come to this meeting, and I gave the time for the meeting and the day. I see I have a resident, Mr. Jabowski, who has been to the council meeting twice, and I'm proud to see him. He's taking the advice to come and see where his money is going. So that's all I have to say at this point. And I will be working hard, very hard, since I have been re-elected, to do more with less, but trying to garner more since I found out the two definitions of broke. Thank you very much.
There's more than two, I have to tell you.
Thank you.